The doors of the tribunal chamber sealed shut behind me with a heavy metallic sound, and before I even reached the center of the floor, I felt something was wrong. 400 delegates from across the galaxy sat in silence, watching me the way prey watches a shadow it cannot yet identify. I did not know it then, but I was about to lose something I had never lost in 11 cycles of hunting. My name is Korvath Dren, and until that day, no creature in the galaxy had ever made me feel small. I had come to this tribunal for one purpose. The humans, a young species from a small blue world, had submitted a petition to join the coalition of known worlds as full members. The coalition had summoned me because I was the most experienced hunter alive, a being who had tracked and studied more dangerous species than anyone in recorded history. My task was simple. I was to give my professional opinion on whether this new species deserved a seat among us. I had already made up my mind before I arrived. I walked to the center platform where a curved table waited for me, and I placed my data files on its surface. Behind me, a massive screen lit up with images from my personal archive, each one a trophy from a different world. A skull from the Thren matriarchs, whose acid could dissolve solid rock. A set of claws from the Vantor cliffwalkers, creatures who could climb sheer stone faster than falling water. 412 species in total, each one hunted, studied, and defeated by my own hands. The 3 human delegates sat at a long table across from me. An older woman with silver hair sat in the middle, her posture straight and calm. Beside her sat a broad-shouldered man in a dark uniform, his expression unreadable. At the far end sat a much younger woman, quiet, almost forgettable, her eyes fixed on a small notebook in front of her rather than on me. I began speaking without waiting for an introduction. Delegates of the coalition, I said, I have spent 3 full cycles studying the species called humanity, at your request. I have reviewed their history, their conflicts, their biology, and their behavior. I say this without any personal anger toward them. They do not belong among us. A quiet murmur moved through the chamber, but nobody interrupted me, so I continued. This species has no claws worth mentioning, no venom, no natural armor, no special sense that gives them an advantage in the wild. For most of their history, they hid in caves and shelters from creatures far weaker than even the smallest predator I have hunted. They survived not through strength, but through luck and hiding. That is not the foundation of a species worthy of full membership in this coalition. I turned toward the human delegation, letting my gaze rest briefly on each of them. I mean no cruelty in saying this, I continued. I say it because the coalition was built by hunters, explorers, and warriors, who earned their place among the stars, through strength and skill. Humanity did not earn anything through strength. They stumbled into fire. They stumbled into tools. They stumbled into flight, and eventually into space itself, always by accident, always slow, always soft. Giving them a seat in this coalition would be like giving a trophy to a creature that merely survived a storm it never understood. I gestured toward the glowing record above the chamber floor, where the list of my 412 trophies scrolled slowly across the air like a banner of proof. I have hunted the most dangerous creatures this galaxy has ever produced, I said. I did not need to hunt humanity to understand what they are. They are a soft, slow, clawless species that happen to get lucky. For a moment, the silence in the chamber felt like agreement. I allowed myself a small measure of satisfaction, the kind that comes only after years of hard-earned reputation. Then the older woman with silver hair spoke for the first time. Hunter Dren, she said, her voice calm but firm. You speak of luck as though it were an insult. May I ask what you believe luck actually is? I had expected a defense of humanity's achievements, not a philosophical question. Still, I answered honestly. Luck, I said, is the absence of skill. It is survival without effort. A creature that survives by luck has not proven anything about its true strength. And yet, she said, every species you have ever hunted also survived long enough to develop the very traits you praise. The Thren matriarchs did not choose to grow acid glands. Evolution gave that to them, in the same way evolution gave humans clever hands and curious minds. If luck disqualifies my species, does it not also disqualify yours, Hunter Dren? After all, you did not choose your own reflexes, your own senses, or your own strength. Evolution gave you those as well. I paused, feeling the first small crack in my confidence, though I refused to let it show. There is a difference, I said, between traits that allow a creature to dominate its environment and traits that merely allow it to hide from that environment. My abilities allow me to hunt. Human abilities, from what I have studied, allow them only to avoid being hunted. The broad-shouldered man beside her leaned forward slightly. Is avoiding death not also a form of victory, Hunter Dren? He asked. You speak as though only the hunter matters, and never the hunted. But every predator in this galaxy depends on prey species surviving long enough to reproduce, or else the predator itself would starve. If prey species stopped surviving through hiding, running, or adapting, predators like yourself would have nothing left to hunt. I felt my patience thinning, though I kept my voice steady. You misunderstand the purpose of this hearing, I said. I am not here to debate the philosophy of predator and prey. I am here to give my professional judgment on whether humanity deserves a seat among species who have proven themselves capable of standing on equal ground with the rest of us. In 11 cycles of hunting, I have never once encountered a human in the wild who displayed any trait worth recording in my archive. Because you never hunted one, the silver-haired woman said simply. You studied us from a distance. You never once tested us the way you tested every other species on that wall behind you. I felt something tighten in my chest, though I told myself it was simply irritation. I did not need to hunt humanity personally to understand their weaknesses, I said. My research was thorough. I reviewed centuries of your recorded conflicts, your biology, your medical data, and your military history. I have never seen a species with so little natural capability rely so heavily on tools simply to survive basic environmental challenges. Interesting, the broad-shouldered man said. Because from what I understand, Hunter Dren, you also rely on tools, your hunting equipment, your tracking devices, your weapons, your armor. Are those not also tools? I opened my mouth to answer, but the silver-haired woman spoke again before I could. Let me ask you something simpler, she said. Of the 412 species on your trophy wall, how many of them hunted other species using tools they built themselves? Not natural weapons like claws or venom, but constructed tools, designed and built with intention. I considered the question carefully, aware that the chamber had grown quieter, almost expectant. Several species used simple tools, I admitted. Sharpened stones, basic traps, primitive weapons. And how advanced were those tools, compared to a fusion reactor, a starship engine, or a medical scanner capable of repairing damaged tissue at the cellular level? She asked. I did not answer immediately, because I understood where this line of questioning was heading, and I did not like it. Advancement in tool-making, I said carefully, does not equal strength in the traditional sense that this coalition values. Then what does strength mean to you, Hunter Dren? She asked. Because it seems to shift depending on which species you are speaking about. The chamber murmured again, but this time the murmur did not feel like agreement. It felt like curiosity, like an audience leaning forward to see what would happen next. I decided to change the direction of the conversation before it slipped further from my control. Strength, I said, raising my voice slightly, is proven through direct combat and survival in hostile environments without dependence on artificial protection. I have survived the ice fields of Corvinus 3 with nothing but my own body and my training. I have outlasted predators twice my size, using only my instincts. Humanity, by contrast, cannot survive even a single night in most environments across this galaxy without artificial shelters, suits, or medical intervention. Neither can you survive in the vacuum of space without a suit, the broad-shouldered man said calmly. Neither can you survive underwater without equipment, or in extreme radiation without protection. Every species in this chamber relies on some form of adaptation, whether biological or artificial, to survive environments they were not originally designed for. You are simply choosing to call your adaptations natural, and human adaptations artificial, because it suits the argument you walked in here wanting to make. I felt heat rise beneath my skin, though I forced myself to remain composed. I had faced far more dangerous opponents than words, yet something about this exchange felt more dangerous than any physical confrontation I had experienced in years. Let us return to something measurable, I said. I have tracked, studied, and in many cases physically hunted the deadliest species across 9,000 worlds. My archive speaks for itself. Humanity has no equivalent achievement. They have not hunted a single dangerous species successfully without the use of overwhelming technology. And yet, the silver-haired woman said, her tone still calm, still patient, you just admitted that your own success depends heavily on technology as well. Weapons, tracking devices, armor, communication systems. If technology disqualifies a species from being considered strong, then your own achievements should also be disqualified by the same standard. The chamber was fully silent now, and for the first time since I had entered, I felt the weight of every eye in that room pressing against me, waiting to see how I would respond. I decided to shift the conversation once more, hoping to regain solid footing. Very well, I said. Let us discuss something beyond technology. Let us discuss instinct. A true predator can sense danger before it becomes visible. A true predator can read the intentions of another creature through subtle movement, scent, or behavior. Humanity, from everything I have studied, relies almost entirely on conscious thought and communication to detect threats. They lack the raw instinctive awareness that defines every other apex species in this coalition. For the first time since the hearing began, the young woman at the far end of the table lifted her eyes from her notebook and looked directly at me. "Hunter Dren," she said quietly, "may I ask you something?" Her voice was soft, almost gentle, yet something about it made the hairs along my arms rise slightly, as though some deep part of me already sensed danger approaching. "You may," I said, trying to sound confident. "You have 412 trophies," she said. "That is a very impressive number." "It is," I said. "Earned over 11 cycles of hunting across 9,000 worlds." "How many of those 412 species," she asked, "ever hunted you back?" I paused, momentarily confused by the phrasing of her question. "Many attempted to defend themselves during the hunt," I said. "None succeeded in overcoming me. That is the very reason they became trophies rather than survivors." "That is not what I asked," she said, still calm, still quiet. "I did not ask how many defended themselves in the moment. I asked how many of them studied you first. How many built a plan around your specific habits, your movement patterns, your weaknesses, before ever encountering you. How many treated you not as prey to be caught, but as a threat to be understood and prepared for?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no immediate response came to me. "Predators do not typically hunt other predators," I said finally. "That is not how ecosystems function. I select species that occupy the top position within their environment, and I test myself against them." "That is exactly my point," she said. "Every one of those 412 species was, in some way, prey, something that reacted in the moment, using instincts given to it by evolution. Not one of them studied you specifically, the way you studied us." The chamber remained silent, but the silence had changed in quality. It no longer felt like agreement, and it no longer felt neutral. It felt like the quiet before something significant. "You spent 3 full cycles studying humanity before ever considering direct contact," she continued. "You reviewed our history, our conflicts, our biology, our medical advancements, our military strategies, and our psychological responses to loss and danger. You built an entire file on us before this hearing even began, a file thorough enough to submit as evidence to this very tribunal." "That was simply due diligence," I said, though my voice had lost some of its earlier strength. "Due diligence," she repeated softly. "Yet in 11 cycles of hunting 412 different species, how many of those species received that same level of preparation from you before you approached them? How many of them earned 3 full cycles of your personal study, your caution, and your careful planning, before you ever set foot near their world?" I searched my memory, and the answer, uncomfortable as it was, became clear, even before I spoke it aloud. "None," I admitted quietly. "None," she repeated. "You hunted 412 species through observation, tracking, and direct confrontation, often within days or weeks of arriving on their world. Yet with humanity, a species you call soft, slow, and weak, you spent 3 entire cycles preparing before you ever agreed to stand in the same room as their representatives. Why is that, Hunter Dren?" I felt something shift inside me, something I had not experienced in longer than I could remember. It was not fear exactly, but it was close enough to make my chest feel tight. "Perhaps," she continued gently, "some part of you already understood that humanity was not the kind of species you hunt by simply walking into a jungle and waiting for movement. Perhaps some part of you recognized, long before this hearing began, that we were something you needed to approach with caution rather than confidence." I said nothing, because for the first time in 11 cycles, I genuinely did not know how to respond. "I would like the official record to reflect something important," she said, turning slightly toward the assembled delegates. "Hunter Dren has hunted 412 species throughout his career, and in every single case he approached with confidence, speed, and minimal preparation, because he understood those species as simple threats to be overcome. Yet when presented with a single new species, a species he personally describes as weak and unworthy, he required 3 full cycles of careful, detailed study before agreeing to even meet their representatives directly." She paused, letting her words settle across the chamber. "That is not the behavior of a hunter confronting something beneath him," she said. "That is the behavior of a hunter who, whether he admits it or not, recognized something dangerous enough to require unprecedented caution." The silence that followed was unlike anything I had experienced during any hunt across 9,000 worlds. It was heavier than the deepest ice fields of Corvinus III, and colder than the highest peaks I had ever climbed in pursuit of prey. I looked toward the glowing record still displayed above the chamber floor, my 412 trophies scrolling slowly through the air, each one a testament to victories I had once been proud of. For the first time, I noticed something I had never allowed myself to see before. Every single trophy represented a creature that had reacted to me in the moment, using only instinct and desperation. Not one of them had ever studied me first. Not one of them had ever prepared a defense based on careful observation of my own habits and weaknesses. Only humanity had done that, and I had not even needed to hunt them directly to prove it. My own actions, my own caution, had already proven it for me. The silver-haired woman spoke again, her voice steady and clear. "Hunter Dren," she said, "you came into this chamber today to argue that humanity does not deserve a place among the Coalition, because we lack claws, venom, natural armor, and raw physical strength. Yet you have just confirmed, through your own testimony and your own actions, that despite everything we lack in claws and venom, we are the only species in your entire career that made you cautious enough to prepare for 3 full cycles before standing in the same room as us." She turned slightly toward the assembled delegates. "I believe that answers the question this tribunal was truly asking today," she said. "Not whether humanity possesses claws or venom, but whether humanity possesses the intelligence, the adaptability, and the strategic depth to stand among species that have long relied on raw physical power, rather than careful thought. I believe Hunter Dren has answered that question for us, without meaning to." I sat in silence, unable to find a single argument strong enough to counter what had just been revealed. Every point I had prepared, every piece of evidence I had gathered, suddenly felt insignificant compared to the simple truth that had just been exposed in front of hundreds of delegates from across the galaxy. The presiding officer of the tribunal, an elderly being with deep violet skin, rose slowly from the central seat. "Given the testimony provided today," the officer said, "including the unintentional admission made by Hunter Korvath Dren regarding his own unprecedented caution toward the human species, this tribunal finds sufficient evidence to support humanity's petition for full membership within the coalition of known worlds." A wave of quiet murmurs spread across the chamber, though this time the murmurs did not feel directed at humanity with doubt or mockery. They felt directed at me, filled with a quiet, almost respectful curiosity, as though the delegates were reconsidering everything I had said only moments before. I remained seated at the central platform long after the session ended, staring at the glowing record of my 412 trophies still displayed above the chamber floor. For the first time in 11 cycles, that number did not feel like proof of strength. It felt like a record of things that had never truly threatened me, standing beside a single new entry I had never dared to add. As the chamber slowly emptied, the young woman who had asked that single question walked past me, pausing only briefly. "You are a skilled hunter, Korvath Dren," she said quietly. "But skill alone does not always reveal the full picture. Sometimes the most dangerous creature in the room is not the one with the sharpest claws or the strongest venom. Sometimes it is the one who makes even the greatest hunter pause before approaching." She walked away without waiting for a response, leaving me alone with my trophies, my archive, and a question I would carry with me for the rest of my career. For the first time since I began hunting across the stars, I understood that true strength was not always measured in claws, venom, or raw power. Sometimes it was measured in the quiet caution of an experienced hunter who, without even realizing it, had already confirmed the very thing he came to deny.